T-minus 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Launch Sequence podcast. This one is looking a little different today. We just had a whole, a solid 30 minutes, I would say, 30, 45 minutes of tech problems trying to get this to work and decided to switch over to a new system. So here we are. Joining me today to try out this new system is a good friend, Morphologis. How are you doing after all of that tech work we just did?
I'm feeling invigorated and excited for the events to come.
Yeah, that was you get through all that IT work and suddenly everything else seems so much better.
It does. And
Gosh.
Actually no, this is really nice cuz I can see you much better in this program.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's it happens too. It's part of just doing this stuff. You're putting together all these different pieces of technology from different companies and they don't always work well together. So thank you for sitting through that.
No,
and
my pleasure.
All of you who are just listening to this, you don't have to worry about any of it. So we are here today to talk about Star Citizen, believe it or not. Surprise, surprise. Specifically, I wanted to get Morphologis, who is a pretty big voice in the community, who follows the game and makes videos about the game a lot, and just kind of talk about the things that are exciting us about what's coming up, the things that maybe we're possibly concerned about or very interested in seeing coming up, and also how they're growing from things that are already in the game or that we're already getting to experience. But before we start, I don't think we did this in your previous episodes. You've been in here. This is your third time, I think, but I don't think we ever actually laid out the type of content that you shoot for, what you try to make your YouTube channel about. We might have, but we're going to do it again because from my perspective, I make a lot of content about things that are coming, whereas you make a lot of content about things that are in the game. So what's kind of your overall goal with your YouTube channel when it comes to Star Citizen?
Well, my goal is to we did have this conversation I think before. Maybe it was after the stream though. My content really is focused around stuff that is longer lasting. So less news and more things that are less likely to change over the course of the next coming months. So in effect, it's what's called evergreen content in the biz. It's just because the reality of my situation is that I don't have a whole lot of time to make content. So when I do make content, I want it to be high quality and something that is not necessarily tied to a specific release window, because that's kind of what news is. Like if you talk about the latest news a week after it comes out, no one's going to watch that video. But if it's in, it's an interesting subject that is always relevant, it's going to be interesting. So I have a little bit more flexibility, which I need for making the videos than I need to, because I have full-time jobs. So it can. Yeah, I gotta balance a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I mean that's crazy doing a full-time job on top of this, but you put out high quality videos like every 2 weeks or so, sometimes faster. And I try
to do every week, but it doesn't always. I don't always make it. Sometimes it'll be after 2 weeks, but in a good month it'll be 4 videos.
Mm-hmm. Well, is that like, have you ever just not really regretted, but wish you could do more? Or is that pretty solid? That's where you want to be?
All the time, actually. I wish I could do more all the time. But the thing is that I do like my job most of the time. And so I don't necessarily regret, continuing to hold on to it, because it is a career and the experience that I'm getting is going to be valuable going into the future. And I hate to say this, but I don't necessarily know if that's true about my YouTube channel. I don't know how long this is going to last for. Maybe I'll become irrelevant today and I'll have to start,
you don't want to be a YouTube superstar?
So, what is a YouTube superstar even?
You don't want to be the Mr. Beast of Star Citizen.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, YouTube's a weird thing, and also it is, you have a good point. Basing your career on social media is scary. It's sketchy.
It's like volatile. Yeah, very very volatile.
Especially.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh.
No. Now you have to go ahead.
Now I have to go. Well, I like. There's just you never trends can shift so quickly, and if you don't follow that trend, you might suffer, and sometimes you don't want to. Maybe it just doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't interest you to follow that trend because that's what people want to see. Sometimes you just got to be yourself. Sometimes that's okay. Sometimes it does work, but you just don't know. And there are some few exceptions in this world where people are able to be themselves and still be successful. Asmongold comes to mind. He's just himself and he talks, and people love it. He's interesting to listen to, but not everybody can do that. It's really
right.
hard to get to
Yeah,
the point.
that's you see the success stories, but you don't see all of the failures, or at least not failures, but maybe the lukewarm experiences people have had trying to replicate that.
Oh, yes, and there are many, 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 many of them.
Yeah, and like you said, you kind of mentioned that there are things you can do. Sometimes you don't want to, and it really can come down to like a split decision. Like you could make a video about a topic and at the last second decide you want to take a slightly different approach to that topic, and that just can completely change the way that it's perceived, that it's viewed. It can change like click-through rates and just all this stuff. It really is different from having a job where you do your work and you know that the pay is going to come for that work because you are maintaining the responsibility. It's not about whether people are excited or happy about what you're doing or not. That definitely throws a wrench in that system.
Absolutely, yeah. So, it's also really highly stressful. I mean, it's a very stressful thing to have to depend on that and think about. It's all on you to think about how you can better come at it and make content that people want to watch. But I'm not sure if this is at all very interesting to people listening, but I don't know. It is an interesting subject for us because we are certainly both two content creators who do think deeply about these things. I think, right? So
yeah. It's early podcast content. We're working into it. Don't worry, folks. Don't worry. But it is, it's stressful. I wish that. Sometimes I really just wish that somebody was just walking up to the front door and being like, okay, so this week you should do this, and this, and you'll be good. I'm like, you have to do that for yourself. It's not as intense, I think, as running a brick and mortar business, but it is kind of similar in that you decide everything. And I personally have never done that before. I went to school, I got traditional education. I just kind of went along with the motions as I went through, and then I got to an engineering job and I just did what I was supposed to do with engineering. I had some freedom, but there's always a goal to strive for, and when you're doing this kind of stuff, suddenly you have to set those benchmarks and those milestones for yourself and make sure that they're adequate and they're actually getting you somewhere. Mm-hmm. It's hard to do sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. And it's really hard to know what the goals should be. Who knows there are some people who definitely have that special sauce that makes them very successful, but it's hard to find that yourself. It's different for a lot of There's no one perfect solution. There's no one perfect formula for success in any field. So, yeah.
As far as spontaneous video on demand content goes, it's a pretty new form of media and area for people to congregate. So everybody's still kind of learning, I think.
Oh yeah, certainly.
But getting back to the content that you make, because that's why we're all here. I want to start our discussion today surrounding Star Citizen, what's coming up, what's been going on. I want to start with your most recent video, which is the Centurion new ground vehicle. I didn't even know it was coming. I discovered that it was coming out from your own thumbnail, so that caught me off guard. Somebody was like, "Yeah, have you seen the new vehicle?" And I was like, "Is that supposed to be talked about?" They were like, "Yeah, it's in the game."
Like, yeah, they just kind of dropped it on us. Just like, "Hey, by the way, new vehicle coming in this PT cycle." Like, what? And they don't even make a post or anything on the website. Usually they have a sale right when they go live with it, but this time it's like very unusual. They pretty much are relying completely on community word of mouth for advertisement for this new vehicle, and I think that's an interesting way of doing it. Certainly, probably saves them money with the advertisement team or the marketing team.
Yeah.
They don't have to do as much legwork, and I'm pretty sure it's pretty effective too.
Because it's not a big. I wouldn't think of it as a super important vehicle. It handles the role that another vehicle already handles in a different way, and it's a ground vehicle.
Yeah, it's not a super important vehicle, but it is it fits a particular niche that's really relevant right now because of the events that they want to run with Jumptown. That's specifically what it's made for. It's made for the people who want to lock down Jumptown. There was an issue that they identified with the Ballista, which is that it's not able to be resupplied easily. And so a lot of people noted that, having some sort of ground-based turret would be a lot better of an option for right now. And CIG, I think, responded to that. I think CIG's been really good throughout their entire development of being responsive to the community. But I think particularly as of late, they've been really good at making changes for quality of life stuff that we need. And I'm sorry, is that sound in my background or?
No, that's me. We'll actually have to cut this part out. Sorry. There's a mosque right outside my window. So
I see.
Whenever there's a call to prayer, yeah.
Well, shout out to our Muslim people out there who may be watching.
Yes. Yes. I don't mean to bring it into the podcast, but it's a little inevitable living in this house. So
yeah, you're in Turkey, right? So
yeah.
So yeah, that should be expected.
Yeah, and it is. It's just you don't really expect to have one it's right here. I could throw a ball and hit it. I wouldn't.
Wow.
You would, I'm not going to do it. Don't worry. But it's really close, so it's just super loud right now. But it's okay. We'll cut through this part.
It's all good. It's all good. It's interesting. It's interesting knowing that you moved to Turkey. I actually want to. I'm not sure how much people know about what's happened with why you've moved there. I'm not sure if you shared that, but I certainly don't know very much about it. Do you care to talk about why you've gone to Turkey? Because that's kind of a out of left field for me. I wasn't expecting that.
Okay, well, you got to remember what you were saying because we were on a good line of discussion.
We were, but now that this thing has come up, I mean, the conversation has shifted a little bit.
All right. So we'll get back to ground gameplay and Star Citizen.
Yeah.
I've explained a few times in different scenarios why we're in Turkey. Mainly right now, this immediate trip, we've been back and forth here over the last 4 years for different reasons. This time, though, is because it's much more affordable for us doing just Space Tomato, just YouTube and stuff as our living. We're still trying to get to a point where we can afford California. So it makes a lot more sense for us to live here.
Who can afford California, really?
Yeah, so my wife's from here. This is her hometown. We're living here not far from her parents, her own brother, his family, all of these people who know us. So we're very comfortable here. We have a great support system here. We've got everything that we need, and now we are able to afford living here. So we live here for 4 or 5 months of the year, go back to America, and really kind of settle down there finally. But we'll always be coming back to Turkey during the summers, I think. The original reason why we came here branches off from an executive order that was passed in 2017 that gave the immigration control officers much, much higher levels of power. They didn't have really checks and balances that they had to meet, so they were able to make decisions on the spot without anybody really stopping them. And unfortunately, the U.S. and Turkey were having bad relations at that time, and the U.S. took that opportunity to stop any new visas from being made for America. And at that same time, border control decided to go a step further, and they started to kick people out who had visas. So my wife was one of those people, and she was given a 5-year ban. Yeah. So after a certain amount of time, I moved to Turkey to be with her so that we could fight the ban from here. And we did. We successfully won. We got the ban removed early with no problems whatsoever. In fact, it was kind of annoying because we spent 2.5 years trying to sit down with somebody, And then we sat down with someone for like a 30-minute conversation, and they were like, okay, there's no problem here. We'll remove the ban.
It's so frustrating, man. I
Yeah,
feel so
and
bad
it's like,
for you.
why?
Wow. For you and your
Yeah,
wife.
so
I'm sorry, girlfriend or wife? I apologize.
girlfriend and then wife.
And then wife. Okay.
So we got
yeah.
married throughout the process, yeah.
You got married throughout the process. All right. Yeah. So I mean
Yeah.
I'm so sorry that that your wife experienced that. I as an American, I feel frustrated and ashamed that good people can suffer from those sorts of decisions that are just arbitrary and off the wall, and in some cases based purely in short-sightedness, let's say.
On nothing really.
Yeah.
I hope that in the future we can be some people, a force who can bring more awareness to this kind of stuff. Not in the sense that, not in some crazy sense that we want to change the world or change the country, but I think people should understand that, like, when these things are discussed, it's not just extreme cases. You have some weird things, some weird edge cases that happen where people get caught up in this stuff, and it really goes to show that we need to figure out a way to make case-by-case judgments, because I mean, it changed our entire lives. Like, I would not,
Clearly.
I was working a job. I was rising up in this job in Florida for engineering. I was ready to go into aerospace. Like, I would not have done YouTube as a career if this hadn't happened. So while I am grateful for that opportunity, it really is like, it's the littlest thing. You might read it in a newspaper or an article or something, but it's life-changing for people.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. And I think it's good that we have these kinds of discussions as Americans, because it's striving for a more perfect union is I think, a very American thing. Asking whether or not we can do better, and certainly we can do better in this area.
I mean, I do hope that people want me to be in America.
I think that you don't have to be in America right now to be an American, but I'm American.
Yep.
I identify as American, even though I live in Taiwan right now. But yeah, I get what you mean. I think.
Oh man.
I believe. Okay, now we're getting into politics too much, but I just want to say this one last thing: is I think that America was founded on a wide variety of different religions and walks of life, and I think supporting that going forward. I think that is what it is to be American, is to be diverse, because that's what makes us so great, having great points of view, different points of view that offer interesting solutions that a homogenous society wouldn't have thought of. So
yeah, I would have never taken off my shoes entering a building if I hadn't met my wife. And to be quite honest,
interesting.
It's nice. I like it. Yeah, it's cleaner inside.
You know, it's interesting. We don't do that in Taiwan. Well, no, I do that in Taiwan, but it's very prevalent in Japan. Like, so a lot of people wear slip-on shoes because a lot of people, when they even go to like, it's not necessarily even a person's house. Like, just going to a nice restaurant or something, you might remove your shoes. Yeah, you might remove your shoes. Certainly in places that are more traditional, like let's see, Kyoto. Kyoto has a lot of those where they've got tatami mats, so you've got to take your shoes off for sure, because you don't want to damage those.
I mean, it, like, when it gets explained, it makes sense. You're like, you go outside and you step in stuff on the street, and then that stuff is like kind of on the bottom of your shoes, and you step into the house with that. And then that stuff is on the floor where you go and you walk on it with your bare feet, and then your bare feet are in the bed. So now suddenly this stuff that was from outside is in your bed. And it's like, okay, I get it.
Yeah. I think that is, we're a little spoiled as Americans, because America is so huge and so underpopulated as compared to other parts of the old world, where it's super, super dense. Everyone's living on top of each other. So it's hard to keep everything clean. You're tracking stuff in, like, out where I live in Wisconsin, you walk outside and it's like untouched earth when nobody's walked for like 20 years because it's just, it's someone's farmland or something, right? There's no chance of me tracking something other than maybe possibly dung inside the house from like a dog or a cow. But
oh, that's fun.
Yeah, but that's even rarer. Like, you can smell it, so you'll know.
Yeah. So about shoes.
Anyway,
to throw a smooth transition in there. I was going to say something about Star Citizen and shoes.
Way off topic. I apologize, but I feel. I mean, it's a relevant thing because we just heard it interrupt your stream. So I was very interested to hear your side. I know you're the interviewer, but I want to know. I want to know about you. I want to know about what's going on with your life.
Oh, so. I love questions. The thing is, like, there's always people always kind of want to know, and I'm always like, I don't know if this is the best place to really get into it. But I say that every single time somebody asks, so I never know when to explain it. You know, it's always, look, I'm cutting off my Star Citizen content.
Keenan, you've already gone off the deep end with that fundraiser that we did, so I don't think you need to be afraid so much about it being open with your personal views.
I mean, it's not even a views thing either. That's the issue. Is like it has nothing to do with my own views. It's just something that happened to us.
Yeah,
and
well, everything's been politicized nowadays, so it's very different. It's very difficult to talk about anything, especially that, without somebody getting weird.
Somebody accused me on Twitter last week of being paid by Turkey to disrupt American politics. They were saying I shouldn't be talking about America, and I was like, I got one of those too. Know that I'm American? Yeah. I am. I just came from there 2 weeks ago.
No, I got a very similar comments. Like, why are you commenting on American stuff when you don't even live in America right now? It's like, I grew up in America. My family's in America. Right. I didn't give up my citizenship.
Yeah.
So it's ridiculous.
But anyways, back to Star Citizen. We were talking about the ground gameplay that is developing, the Centurion being a part of this, kind of them fixing a problem that they were seeing. And one of the things you mentioned I wanted to ask about, you said that they identified a problem with the ballista. Is that something that they talked to the community about? They like a retrospective?
No, it was just a commentary that a lot of people had. I mean, there's a lot of posts on Reddit, Spectrum. There were videos made. Like I talked about it in my streams, like when we had the ballistas. It was just really frustrating to have to rearm them and have to once it was depleted, your jump town would be completely undefended if you were trying to hold it down. It was just kind of a frustrating experience. We just kind of wish that there was a way for us to easily rearm those things. If there was it doesn't have to be just click a button and suddenly they're back out of nowhere. There could be a process to make it interesting. That's gameplay. That would be a very interesting logistical gameplay, but as it is, it's just very difficult. You've got to pick the vehicle up, transport it somewhere else, and then bring it back. And it's a pain in the butt. So a lot of people are saying, like, let's. What about a turret? I mean, why not have a turret that we can man? I mean, it seems like the logical next thing to have. And so they made it. I mean, it just makes a lot of sense. It feels like something that should have been one of the first ground vehicles for defense. The ballista's cool, but I think this thing is also a lot more useful given the current mechanics in the game. We don't have rearming mechanics. So
yeah, and that actually brings up a fun question. I want to imagine what the process of rearming a ballista out in the middle of like a moon would be, because you would have to load the missiles into a ship and then load them from the ship to the ballista. How tangible do you think that would be? Are you talking about literally putting the missiles into the ballista, or just kind of being close to it and dragging and dropping? What's your thoughts?
See, I think that this is a very interesting question that they've not addressed. So there is going to be rearming gameplay that we know in Star Citizen. There's going to be a logistical component to it out in the field, but they've never really talked on what that's going to look like. I think that's something I hope they would talk about, but in my mind, I think the most logical way to do it is that for ammunition is that you have a standardized ammunition box. Maybe there's a couple different sizes for different weapon sizes. So say like for size 5, 6, and 7, they're one box, and then for 2 and 3 they're another, and then for 1 it's like a small box or something. Whatever they want to do, just to kind of make a typology of these different ammo box sizes, and then there would be a component slot where you slot it in, like a box drop off. You know what we do in Star Citizen right now. That makes a lot of sense for me because it'd be too difficult to try to have a different kind of ammo box for every single weapon in the game. It just needs to be one slot in the ship with a standardized size that you slot something in and then you rearm the ammo. or batteries. Like if it's like a battery thing or the capacitor thing. I don't think that's necessary though, because we have capacitors. But for missiles, I think that's a little different. I think missiles actually could be physical, because there aren't that many on ships, and they already have the physical models in the game that you can move around physically. So I think having them snap on, like if you have the option to place it, for example, or you have a tractor beam to move it and place it onto the ship where it just snaps into place, I think that would be really, really cool. And it could be really fun, actually, because you're doing it under pressure. If you're like a really efficient team, like a ground crew or a deck crew on an Idris, it can make a huge difference in your gameplay, in the fight you might have with another organization or the Van Duel or something. So that's kind of, I guess, how I envision it. Because I think that the idea of having it just suddenly appear on your ship because of the proximity of another is very uninteresting. There's not really any gameplay associated with that. Just kind of there, and it happens. So doesn't seem very Star Citizen to me, does it?
No, absolutely not.
Star Citizen to you?
One of those things that
I don't hear you.
Star Citizen always seems. Oh, no. Oh, you were hearing me through Discord, huh?
Wait. Are you talking to me? Did you mute Discord? Hello?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. If you want to mute Discord, you can. I can unmute you here in Riverside.
Yeah. Go ahead and do that. Just to be a little more confident about where the sound is going.
Sure. Go ahead. All right, go ahead and speak. Can you say something?
Okay. You hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So I do think that part of what's really exciting about Star Citizen is the logistics side of it, figuring out how to move things to and from places, and the idea of figuring out how to get things in and out of spaces also sounds kind of interesting, but I do get concerned about it. So like, I'm thinking if you have a ballista and you need to get some missiles into it, and you also need to get missiles into wherever it holds its missiles, not in the turret, those are inside. So you need to like tractor beam a missile through the back door of the vehicle and get it into some loading mechanism.
No. I mean,
when it starts to get specific like that,
I think for the mounting points on something like a ballista, all the missiles are mounted outside on the turret. You just tractor beam it over to the turret and it attaches like that.
Okay.
I mean, I'm making it sound simple. I'm sure it's really complex. Solution. But I think all the ships in Star Citizen, with the exception of a few with magazines, like the military variant of the Freelancer, the Mistana, there's a couple of ships with magazine type missiles. With the exception of those, all of them are outboard mount points that you can access. So it seems to me that they'd be easy to load. I'm not quite sure how they would handle the magazine ones, to be honest. Maybe there's just like an insertion point where you put the missile there and it loads, and you put the missile there in the same spot. You just keep putting it in the same spot and it automatically
just kind of snaps in.
Yeah. That's how I'd see that working. But it is like, when you really think about it, it is kind of a complex system, and I'm not quite sure what their solution is going to be for the ammo part of that. The ammo boxes, because they certainly don't have an ammo box component slot yet in any of the ships, and they're talking about them already being gold standard. So are they gonna have to go back and do these things?
Gonna have to get up to platinum standard.
Yeah, no joke.
So the loading of missiles is bringing me back to component stuff, physicalized components, moving those around. That's something that we've been waiting for and hearing about. I mean, we were seeing like individual components getting damaged, the modeling of subcomponent stuff like that we've been seeing for 2, maybe 3 years now. And that's another kind of puzzle that we're going to have to figure out when it comes to things like salvage, engineering, repair. How are we going to get components in and out of the ship? What are your thoughts on that system? Are you excited for that? Do you feel like it's actually anywhere near coming to us? I just want to hear your thoughts.
I think there's a potential that the first iteration of engineering gameplay is going to be purely through MFDs and about routing power between the different components.
Yeah.
before they
Yeah, I get
actually
that.
do the moving around of components, because that does seem a lot more complex. When it comes to really big components, I mean, I don't know how it's going to work, because a lot of ships, for example, the Hammerhead, they've got these components in the hallways that you can access, right? But those components are huge. How are you going to get those through the doorways and lifts? I'm not even sure they can fit. Maybe they figured that out to begin with, but I'm not so sure they did. There's a couple of ships that way which have internal component access. And yeah, it's like, what do you do then if you're replacing the entire component? Man, I don't know. Do they have to go back and add external component access hatches? Maybe. Maybe. I know, though, like in the interim, before they go towards the more complex problems, that the subcomponents are something that they did talk about that do make a lot of sense. So each component that you have in your ship will have a subcomponent, like a fuse, that you can replace. Those things are the things that are going to burn out or be destroyed when a component is hit or overheats, or for whatever reason, that you can have to definitely go physically and physically replace a component of. So I think that makes a lot of sense, because those are like things you can fit in your pocket, those fuse box things, or having a box somewhere on your ship. So yeah, that's kind of
the subcomponents. Mm-hmm. The subcomponents are cool because, like you said, if that's the way that they decide, okay, if a component is damaged, that just means that the subcomponent needs to be replaced. That seems like it would make it a lot easier to do the component gameplay, in that they don't have to worry about components themselves breaking in specific ways. Mm-hmm. They now have these 3 different items inside the component that can break, that will change those ways without having to build that into the component itself. I always thought that was cool, but it's just, it's like, it's one of those things that I want to compare it to, maybe, I would say, the fire hazard system, but we've seen a lot more of that. It's just one of those things that's a big deal, but we don't hear about it in monthly reports. We don't hear about it really on, I don't know if it's even on the progress tracker. It's very much kind of not mentioned at all. And the engineering gameplay and the salvage gameplay are the 2 places I think it's relevant, and both of those are seeing a lot of work.
Yeah, that does have me a little bit, I guess, worried, maybe a little sad.
Hesitant?
Because I think that the initial release of salvage gameplay is not going to be that interesting. I mean, I think it's going to be purely that hull scraping laser thing, which is basically like mining but with ships. You know, it just doesn't seem all that engaging to me right now. I was hoping really that the component salvage part of that mechanic was going to be something that we could do, like if we could take the weapons and components off of a hull and use them or sell them, that would be really cool. I mean, that would be something that feels a little bit more engaging, because you have to get out there physically with the tractor beam tool and tractor it out and put it onto your cargo grid, and you know, it's rewarding in that you've got that component that's worth some good amount of money. A lot of those components, especially the big ones, can be worth hundreds of thousands of AUEC. So that would be like a really cool way to earn money. Definitely would attract a lot of people, but I just can't see the laser thing being all that interesting, sadly.
Well, I feel like for that, since it's the most basic version of salvage, I think the more interesting part of that, which, you know, I hope they would hit, but they probably won't, would be the narrative they can use to surround the missions you get. You know, it's just a laser thing, and it's just like mining. But if they can build the situations around that laser hull stripping to make it actually interesting and believable in the fiction, I think that would go a long way. Unfortunately, with the way they add missions, I don't think that's going to be the case this year.
Yeah, I mean,
that's kind of a bummer.
I think the mission team is pretty small, and their priorities are on just a few things that are more important than adding out more interesting missions, like for salvage. I don't know, honestly. I mean, they don't publicly release their team size numbers and what everybody's working on. We just know that they're focusing on Squadron 42. So yeah, we're just gonna have to wait for stuff like that, unfortunately, for quite some time. I think there will be like
Another
a mission or two with 318 associated with salvaging, but it's going to be like 317 too, where, you know, hey, we added Rex. Cool. How many? One. And there's one mission to do it, and that's it.
Yeah, exactly. I do hope that with persistent entity streaming, with the ability for things to last a little longer in the verse, and with these derelict salvages and derelict ships, they will also allow us to at least hull scrape that stuff.
Yeah.
It sounds like that's the plan, and I do think that adds an interesting dynamic to interacting with ships if you can scrape the hull off of something and add it to your own ship and stuff like that. Not a big deal, but definitely a good foundational step for that kind of interactivity.
It is. It's a good foundational step, and that's really what this year is foundational tech.
You can see it on your face. That's what the last 10 years have been.
Yeah.
Another related feature to that, though, or I guess similar, coming in the same patch or scheduled for the same patch, is the cargo refactor, which has been a buzzword for about as long as server meshing at this point. The cargo refactor is like, we've been waiting for the ability to interact with all cargo unanimous or universally for a long time, since before 3.0. And this one's not necessarily going to be the whole thing. This is just the beginning of the cargo refactor, much like the inventory system was the beginning of that. But from what we've heard about it, which admittedly is not as much as I'd like, what do you think of it coming up?
Well, I think we talked about and identified issues with the challenges that CIG would have earlier on. Perhaps it was a discussion between you and I don't recall, but we talked about the fact, I think, that in order for the cargo factor to be as it's been discussed, or like cargo to be realized in the way that it's been discussed in the vision of Star Citizen, is that there would have to be a number of other teams working on some big components of Star Citizen to make it fully functional. So, for example, if you're fully physicalizing cargo, how is that cargo being delivered to the hangars? So you need a cargo elevator. How is it being delivered to the pads on any of the outposts? How are you getting that cargo to physically load it? And
freight elevators,
right? And then
tis on the progress tracker,
right? Freight elevators are on the progress tracker. So we know that there's a lot of moving parts to this. That I think when I realized this, I noted that it's unlikely that we're going to get anything like that when this releases. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be an important tech step, but I don't see it anything more than just the fact that cargo is now able to be off the grid, physical, and recognized by your cargo grid. But aside from that, you won't notice really much difference between this and 317. That would be my guess.
But that's a pretty big change, right?
Kind of. I mean, yeah, kind of. It highly depends. So, if the game is the way it is right now with the cargo refactor, then it won't matter that the cargo is detached, because it'll just despawn. It'll just disappear in a few seconds or something. Because like that's what happens right now. It just vanishes. And then the other thing is, like, even if it doesn't vanish, how do you find it? Space is huge. The scanners don't recognize cargo or boxes or people. So how are you going to find this stuff spinning through space? You're not. It's impossible. I mean, have you ever tried Have you ever tried to pick somebody out who's fallen out of a ship? You know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, you can see their marker, you know where they are. But trying to get like close enough to them so you don't run into them, but you can see them so they can get on, is actually really hard, because ships move really fast and space is really big. If you didn't have their marker, there is no way you would see them. There's no way you would find them. It would be impossible. Impossible.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the issue that I see with the cargo refactor right now. Is it's going to be a cool tech, but probably not ultimately that impactful for our gameplay experience at present.
Yeah, but and I agree, the scanners would really help being able to see cargo. But I do think that being able to manipulate the cargo outside of the grid is going to do a lot for helping people come up with, it's more of the sandbox gameplay, but I think that's going to be a lot for helping people come up with ways to expand the stuff they're already doing now. Being able to do some bounty hunting, something as simple as blowing up a ship at Jumptown or at an outpost and being able to actually take that stuff and sell it for yourself, I think is cool. But those are large scale views at the edition. Like you're saying, there are other things that need to catch up in order to make it really worthwhile. And the scanning is really a big one.
And the explosion of a ship does cause damage to cargo. So, right now, when a ship explodes, it will drop cargo. It'll drop whatever was in its inventory in an inventory box, and it'll drop SU boxes of whatever commodity you may have been carrying. But the thing is that the ship causes damage to those, and so a lot of them just disappear. They evaporate with the explosions. So again, cool, they're there, but if the ship damage is still the way it is right now, which I don't see it changing, then all that stuff's just going to disappear anyway, the same as it does right now. I'm sorry to be a party pooper on this. And I'm just trying to, because I think we need to be realistic about our expectations, and that helps. That helps push the narrative towards the more correct direction, so that our feedback is more accurate for when we ask for things, because they do listen to us, where we should direct our frustrations for where we feel development needs to be improved. So, now you can, if your idea is that you really want pirating, well, then we need to talk about all the other components of pirating that need to be brought up to allow for something like that. Same goes for salvage. We need to talk about the explosion of ships not causing enough damage, the idea that they don't despawn, they stay there for some time, that they can be identified and found easily through the scanning system. These are things that we need to understand need to happen. So when we talk about this stuff, like I said in the last video I did about, what was it? Like I said about the Starfield video. Take things that they say at face value, and that's it. Don't ascribe too many hopes or dreams to what they're saying and overhype it, because then it creates these fantastic, unrealistic expectations for features that you think should be with it, but they didn't say anything about, So if they don't say it, they don't directly say that feature is associated with another feature coming out. Don't assume that it's going to be coming out with it. Don't assume that because they say the cargo refactor is going to be part of this patch, that it includes any other feature that's important for cargo refactors, like the cargo lifts. That would be mentioned if that was part of the cargo refactor release. Yeah. But it's not. So it's not going to be part of the cargo refactor release.
And they've specifically said that the cargo refactor release is more about interaction, not about all that stuff.
Right, exactly. And so take it at face value. What is interaction? It's holding the F key and clicking on something. That's it. That's what we're going to get. And that's basically what we're saying is it's going to be physicalized. You're going to be able to pick it up and move it. And that is all you should expect for this release. So yeah, and by the way, not to toot my own horn, but I am, I did say from the video that we saw from Starfield that they're not talking about this being seamless transitions, so don't assume that there are seamless transitions. And guess what came out literally the next day? There are no seamless transitions. I wasn't looking into the future. I was just taking what they said at face value.
Yeah, and you start to realize, people, gosh, so many comments of people like, oh yeah, Starfield is coming out and it's going to show everyone that Star Citizen is a scam. It's not like they haven't actually been building it, because look at what Starfield is able to do. And then you start to see more of kind of these areas where they decided to go another direction. Not to say that this is in no way a statement that is exonerating a Star Citizen of how long it's taken or anything like that. Just to put into perspective that there are some things that are being done that you might perceive to be normal, and then you realize it's not actually as easy as every company just coming out and doing it. In fact, I found out yesterday that No Man's Sky maps aren't even spherical. They're flat with a spherical shader. And that's a game that I always pointed towards as being like, other games can do it. But clearly it's a little more difficult, some of these things, than what is at face value.
They fake it.
When a company, like you said...
Most games have traditionally faked it, because trying to do it for real, as pointed out by Bethesda directly, I think it was, is it Jack Snyder? What's the name of the lead developer at Bethesda? Todd Howard, right. Todd Howard said, I think, in an interview that the reason why they're not doing it is because it would take a lot of development time to do it, but for not much benefit to the gameplay experience. And I think that's really what it comes down to is... for most games, it's about delivering the experience, and whether or not the thing actually works like you believe it works under the hood is not important. It's just like, don't look under the curtain. It's not important how it works. It's important to most people that it does work. CIG doesn't take that approach, which I think is interesting, because it allows for a lot of different types of gameplay that are not intended by the original gameplay feature. But it does create a pretty long development cycle.
Yes, it does.
It does.
But the idea of an experience, it's a great thing you brought that up, because I realize you are focusing very heavily, and we've only really started talking regularly this year, so I'm not sure what you used to do, but you focus very heavily on that idea of the experience. Yes, they're adding this feature, but this feature is nothing if it doesn't have other things to help build it up to be an actual perceivable experience in the game. You talked about that with the cargo refactor. You've talked about that with the interactions or the ship stuff that we were talking about earlier. And you mentioned it in your video earlier this year. This is not the year for the game, because a lot of the stuff that is being added this year will support other things. Is that a view that has changed over time for you? Did you used to focus more on singular features, or have you always kind of been about the overall experience somebody gets from these editions?
Well, I think that by the way, can you say something real quick? I think I just accidentally muted you. Okay. All right, sorry.
Yeah.
All right. Cut that out. Like everybody, like most backers, I began this as being, wide-eyed and innocent, and it just, taking everything in and just being so excited for every new feature coming
sweet
in.
Child.
I was a sweet summer child. But then winter came, and I realized that in the end, this is also part of maturing as a content creator, is that what people really care about, what people really want to find out about, and this also applies to other fields of where you work, is the result. People care about results. So, for example, if I'm designing somebody's house for them, and there's all these steps that I need to do, I need to talk to the city, I need to talk to electricians, an engineer, or whatever trade I need to get involved with in order to deliver the house, the built environment, the built house, is important part of the journey and part of the process that needs to happen. But if I'm really late delivering that, and the client asks me what's going on, and I just say, well, I'm doing this, this, and this, client doesn't care. What the client really cares about is the fact that there's no house. They want the house. So that's how it works in business. Like if you've been in business, if you're a business administrator, if you're running a small business, you know that what it comes down to for the client or for the customer is that they get what they're paying for. And all the details are interesting, but in the end, they don't care about those details. What they care about are results. And that is the perspective I'm taking with Star Citizen is, but kind of, because I do care, and I do think that there is something to be talked about with the interesting part of the tech development that they're doing. That's an interesting subject. But it's only interesting to a niche group of people. It's only interesting to hardcore backers who really are interested in what they're trying to do as an independent game developer, pushing the envelope of what gaming can be, right? But to the the much wider market of people, which is also consequently who I'm trying to target with my videos so that I can grow as a content creator, what they care about is the result. Is it playable? Can they can they go and do the things that they imagine that they can do in a space MMO, or not? Can they not do the thing? They don't care whether or not there's this tech or something happening that's going to enable this or that, this small thing that'll lead up to this thing. They only care whether or not they can do the thing. Can they do the thing right now? And so that is the perspective I'm trying to deliver with my videos, because that is what I think is most valuable to people. That is what's going to be most honest with them, so that they can decide whether or not Star Citizen is the game that they want to get into right now. Because if all I do in my videos is I talk about how great this new tech is coming out and what it's going to enable, it could be misconstrued or misunderstood by people watching that it's going to lead into these actual features with this patch. So if we keep talking, for example, about the cargo refactor being really important for being able to do salvage gameplay so that you can take cargo off of ships, and for pirate gameplay so that you can steal people's cargo, and we don't talk about the fact that if we don't talk about the actual gameplay experience in that patch, then it's going to misrepresent the experience. So I do in the end want to talk about the actual experience, to keep it real, to let people know where we actually stand for when you get in the game and you start playing. What do you actually feel? What do you actually experience? Because that is, in essence, the house, right?
Yeah. What matters to somebody who's playing the game, not somebody who's following
Most
development.
people don't follow development. So it's a niche.
Yeah. I'm trying to do the same, because I agree with you. I realize over the last year or so that I do like talking about the development, but it's good to talk more about the game. And I have not been able to really get into the game and run these sorts of scenarios that you're talking about to feel out the gameplay. I'm actually looking for some people right now that can help with setting up events in my own community, because it's really hard to make the time for that. But I want to start getting into the game more so I can represent that kind of stuff on YouTube.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Saying.
How about this? I mean, let's just look at some examples of very successful YouTubers and streamers. Okay, we're talking about the ones that have got millions of subscribers and thousands of viewers every single day they stream, right? What are they doing? Why are they successful? It's not that their content is it's not necessarily their quality is really great. Maybe their quality is crappy, but maybe they put no effort at all into editing or anything like that. It's more about what I see in very successful streamers and YouTubers is that they're appealing to a broader audience by talking about the experience. They're selling an experience. They're selling a type of experience that's entertaining. So, maybe they're doing a cool thing where they go raid a bunker and they're doing it with some friends and some exciting stuff happens. That is more appealing to a wider audience. And I'm not trying to say I'm not trying to say this is like, oh, that's the content creator. I don't know how to explain this. What I'm trying to say is that because the reason why those videos are so popular is because people care about the experience more than they care about the development. That's why a really well-produced, well-spoken, well-written video discussing the interesting development of Star Citizen will never do as well as a video with no cuts whatsoever that just goes through a really interesting gameplay experience. Those videos will always do better because they're more entertaining to watch for the most part, right? Because that's what people want. They can be. I mean, there are exceptions.
Right. Yeah,
there are exceptions, obviously, for everything, but by and large, it's what people most care about, and as a content creator, that is what I'm trying to do is to answer that need by providing information, discussing the experience people are looking for. Does that make sense?
So follow-up question. Yeah. And follow-up question on that. When did winter come for you?
Probably a year after I started making architect reviews, when I started expanding my content and more into discussing game development. And I
was a while ago.
So that's when I started seeing some of the holes in the new player experience, and started seeing issues with certain missions and just not having enough of them. stuff like that. So when I really started getting into these.
Speaking of new player experience. Yeah. Speaking of new player experience, let's talk about some of the things that they're doing over this next year that like have caught your eye at least. That seems like it's going to improve that, because that's, I think, probably the most important part of the game right now they could develop is just making it easier for people to actually play. What's some stuff you've noticed that you're interested in?
I noticed that they're going to be adding some actual in-game elements for guiding players who are new. They have that on the progress tracker, which I think is a really good idea. I think we've needed that for a really long time. The problem I see with a lot of people who are getting into Star Citizen, and I only really see it then through the people who record it and post it, because I'm not standing over someone's shoulder who's not streaming or YouTubing. But I would assume that their experiences are similar, is that when they hop in, you can see these YouTubers and streamers who are hopping into Star Citizen, is that they encounter something that confounds them because the game doesn't tell them what they're supposed to be doing, and they automatically assume that Star Citizen is broken and buggy. Is because, why doesn't the door open? I want to take off with my ship. What's going on here? Because the game is broken. It's so buggy. Yeah. It's like, you have to call ATC. How would you know that as a new player? Or when you spawn in the city, how do I get to the ship? I want to fly the ship. Every game that they've played up until that point, it's like you go into the game and you click a button and you're in the ship. Star Citizen is like, no. You're going to spawn in a bed. You're going to walk through your apartment, go through the door, find the elevator, go down the elevator, navigate the city, find the MRT system or the transit system, go down there and go get off on the right stop, because you might, no, you got off at the Commons. You have to get off at the spaceport. It's a very different experience, and people are not conditioned to expect that from games nowadays, or ever. I don't think any game has ever done this. So people
really.
have an expectation about what a game is supposed to be and how you're supposed to navigate it, and they're using that knowledge that they have in the past to navigate Star Citizen, and that doesn't apply. And so there needs to be some sort of guide system in game to say, hey, it's different. Open your eyes. Look, there's a sign. It tells you where to go.
Yeah.
Look at that.
But it also, they have like such a balance to hit, because they've got to still lean into that sort of mysterious kind of like learn to read the world, not hand-holdy, but also they definitely need better guide systems. You're right. Like AR objects and little tips that can pop up. The hint system right now is just like, why are you telling me that?
I think that it would be really neat and totally fine to do things like other MMOs, and that's to have an introductory scenario that's skippable, where you're introduced to the various features through a gameplay experience. Like, you think about a lot of the most successful MMOs
absolutely.
today. I know it's kind of a meme now, but when it came out, it was really good. Black Desert Online has a really good tutorial when you start off, where you go through this whole scenario and it teaches you all the parts of the game. But it doesn't really feel like you're in a tutorial. It just feels like you're playing the game. So I think that having Star Citizen do something like that, obviously right now it's hard to do that considering that it's not finished. But in the end, as we get closer to a more finished product, or a product where more people are playing, at least, I think that needs to be done. Even if they're going to have to go back and redo some elements of it, because I think the threshold where that becomes necessary is upon us, I believe. Because we're now starting to appeal to a wider audience with server meshing just on the cusp of releasing, right? That's when people are going to start coming in. When persistence is a thing, and a bigger play area is a thing. Hundreds of players are a thing. You're going to have a lot of people coming in. A lot more people. It's going to be much more broadly appealing. And I think that's when they need to start doing this little bit of hand-holding with a guided mission tutorial. And I think they're going to do something like that.
Yeah.
It does seem like they're working on that.
Yeah, I think just having a selection of missions that have you go and do really based, like not even a courier mission, like they just give you a rental ship and be like, you need to fly this up to the space station. Just go ahead and do that, deliver it, and you're done. And that be like sort of how they factor in a tutorial. I agree. That kind of stuff would be very nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
I think one of the best things that they could add, one of the most universally loved fixes I think they could put into the game that would help with the new player experience too, is the star map rework.
Absolutely. Getting having situational awareness, understanding your surroundings is very important to getting your bearings in a video game, to understand where you need to go, what you need to do. The star map right now is very unusable. It's very unuser friendly. It's a terrible design. It was a terrible design when it came out. It looked cool, like just as an image, but actually using it, not great. Like it's got some serious depth perception issues, fidelity problems. It doesn't really describe your current location at all. Just like, hey, you're on this planet. All right, cool. Like, how big is it? Where am I exactly in this city? Yeah, it's terrible.
It's so bad.
I think you're right. Like, it could effectively be our window onto the universe, where it can tell us about the planet we're on, what cities are on those planets, what resources are available there for us, where we need to go for the spaceport. And these are all very logical things because we have them on our cell phones. Why wouldn't we have them in our future space world, right? We'd have something like Google Maps, right? We would have something like Wikipedia to tell us about interesting aspects of Star Citizen. So I think it's a huge thing for the usability of the game for new players.
That and like something local, just all navigation stuff in the game is kind of miserable. I was working on a video, like 20 tips that, people should probably know when they play Star Citizen to help with some of the stuff we've talked about today. My shot at evergreen content, which I always have to look away from those tutorial videos for the first few weeks because they just do terrible compared to everything else I do at the beginning. But one of the tips that as I was putting the tips together, I realized so many of them had to do with navigation, like ping on planets so that you can see the ground and you know where to go. Don't land too quickly because it's impossible to tell what's below you while you're landing. Be careful with the star map because it doesn't work. Just like all these things that like navigation's terrible right now. And they talk about redoing the quantum system. They talk about FPS radar. They've talked a little bit about alternatives to night vision. I would love to see some development on that stuff happening. Something that we can tangibly say, okay, like this might be coming next year.
I think simply improving the UI that connects us with the world around us is going to improve not only the new player experience, but the overall player experience. I can't express enough how much we need that. So it is exciting to see them hopefully about to release that. Don't know when. I hope it's a surprise release in 3.18, but I'm not holding out hope. I'm not going to be surprised if it doesn't happen.
Ooh, that would be very cool. But yeah, I don't know about that.
Yeah, they've been working on it for a while though. Remember, was it Todd Pappy that talked about it like 2 years ago or a year and a half ago? Like, hey, we're working on the star map. We haven't even seen any images if you really think about it. We've seen nothing about this new star map. Nothing.
No, we haven't. I always point towards the concept images we got from Zane like 6 years ago. And those look really good, and they look like a great like progression towards a better system. But we have no clue if that's even close to what they're thinking now. And they used to talk about the previs, like you said, a couple years ago. They did. They talked about how they were working on 3D building blocks components, but then they went really silent in the last year. Yeah,
they did. I think those people were retasked or maybe left CIG. So it's hard. It's really, really, really hard to know with the black box that is Squadron 42. So, it always comes back to that.
Yeah. Squadron. Oh, I want Squadron to just come out.
I do too. We know nothing about it though. So,
yeah. Okay. I want to touch on kind of a last topic here. Going a little bit over, but I wanted to touch on the new locations that we were getting. So we're seeing a pretty big ramp up of new small points of interest. I take as a good sign looking at their locations teams getting a really good workflow together. They're understanding how to package missions with location stuff like that. But I also kind of want to look at the new colonialism stuff that they're bringing in, which is vastly different from anything else we've had. And specifically, I'd love to hear if you are planning a different approach for that for your architect reviews, because they are like used for something so different than what we've been doing in
certainly.
Stanton.
I mean, I'm going to definitely apply more of my architectural knowledge to them, but I know that they also have an architect on staff for, and I know certainly some of them working at CIG probably have had experience working in a firm to know what they should be doing to make it feel and look realistic. So I think it's going to be interesting to come at it from that perspective. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be different it's going to be less interesting perhaps than architect reviews. I hate to say, I'm not sure how interested people are going to be until we get bigger outposts, because the ones that we have right now, there's not much there. I mean, they're really cool, but there's not much left of what they are. I mean, they're pretty ancient from they're
just a sealed room.
Yeah,
basically.
So we'll have to see. I am excited though about what they're doing. There are only 5 of them, but it's exciting to see them come in the 317.2, because I wasn't expecting them to come at all, not until Pyro. So what I'm really hoping is to see a ramping up of these things in more locations around the Stanton system coming in 318. I want to see, you know what? Go ahead.
So you're talking about the ruins that they just added?
That's what we're talking about, because they added them in 317.2.
Okay. Well, I'm talking about when I look at the ruins that they've added in 317.2, I feel like they are kind of different from some of the stuff we saw regarding the Pyro outposts. So the Pyro outposts have the full colonialism ones, but even their derelict outposts in Pyro felt a little bit different in that they felt more aged and less used. I might be wrong about that though. They could all be part of the same thing, but mainly I was talking about the colonialism outposts that are like fully built and they're like basically little towns, kind of like the one from Citizen Con.
Yeah, no, those are going to be really cool. But yeah, I just don't know, man. I've no idea. The one that they showed off at Citizen Con was really interesting, but it's just sort of a wait and see thing for me at this time. I'm not quite sure what to expect, because that one...
That's fair.
Here's the thing I'm a little bit worried about, is that with a lot of the stuff that they show at Citizen Con, we often never see that stuff again. You know, like it's a one and done thing. You remember the Microtech mission that they showed off for Citizen Con, the last big one that they did, the in-person one. We still don't have that. Or the crashed Javelin, you know, still don't have that from the other Citizen Con. I know it's on Lear, but I mean, it could be reused. Yeah, so, you know, I know that those assets are certainly going to be used in the Colonial Outpost, but is it going to look that good? Is it going to be that big? Is it going to be that scenic? I don't know.
Yeah, the exact scenario, I think, will be different.
Of course. I just hope its fidelity and beauty is on par with what we saw at SitCon. That would be my hope. I hope that what they showed us is what we're going to get.
Yeah, I do too. I think the locations team, in my opinion, is the most showing us the most impressive work right now out of anybody at the studio now. Obviously, people are working on some really cool stuff, Gen 12 stuff, server meshing stuff, all the stuff going on with Squadron. But in terms of like the actual content we've been getting this year, locations team feels like they've been the most efficient. And so I'm interested to see how they tackle this, especially because they've had a lot of time to work with it now. We've been looking at these outposts being built for like 2 years.
So I think what's happened is that, again, most of their resources are in Squadron 42. So we're not seeing what kind of pace they're able to set with their tools that they have. But the other thing is that there were some blockers for the stuff that we're seeing right now that had to do with the Planet Tech team, which were responsible for making the deformable areas that are required to place colonial outposts, ruins, and wrecks. So, like, before, the terrain was not editable once it was generated, at least easily. They'd have to go in and hand adjust the vertices or the terrain to get it flat, and that was just not tenable for producing lots of these things. But now that they've got the tool finished. I think it's called the raster tool or something like that they showed off at the last CitizenCon, the virtual one. Now that that's matured a little bit, they're able to make these outposts kind of quickly. 5 in a patch is 5 more than we've ever gotten in a patch. So it's infinitely faster and more efficient than 0. So I hope, what I really, 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 really hope to see is that in the next coming patches that we see is a ramping up of these teams, limited as they are with their resources, producing more of this stuff and creating more confidence that we are going to have a universe that feels alive. Because that's kind of what these are doing for me, is making the world feel more alive. Knowing that you could head off somewhere on a planet and find something interesting out there other than trees clustered in random formations. That is more interesting.
Yeah. I was getting into the PTU for the first time yesterday and flying out over Clio, and we were looking for that new racetrack, the snake pit that was brought in, but we were still pretty high up, definitely in orbit. And I was looking out the window of the ship I was in and saw it from the ship. And it was just like, it was a whole different, we've seen cities from the ship, but those are cities. Those are these massive predefined areas they made. This was the first time that I felt like I saw a point of interest from space. And like, I was like, holy crap.
I think that's one of the things that's really lacking in Star Citizen right now, actually. Points of interest. We have these beautiful locations on Earth, the Mount Everest or Yosemite Valley, all of these natural formations that are just like, wow, you can see it from space. It's so cool. It's so unique. It's unlike anything else. It's not like Wisconsin, all flat and boring. It's somewhere you want to stop. We have very few of these. So you're right. I had the same experience as you, Tomato, flying in for the first time over with Jerry McGrath on Clio. Seeing that racetrack was a really cool feeling. I wasn't expecting to have that feeling. I wasn't expecting to want something like that. But now that I know that I want that, I want more.
Yeah, exactly. I want to. I love that idea of flying into a planet and
finding
passing things. I've
Seeing
never had that in a game.
takes your interest, right? Because otherwise, everything's just noise. We need that really substantially tall mountain, or that substantially deep valley, or that really interesting old mining colony, or that ruined alien obelisk or something. Just something interesting that we can find out there. It makes it feel like there's a story waiting for us out there to find. It makes you want to explore, because they've got these big planets and moons, millions of kilometers of space. But you kind of just know that there's nothing there to see. But with these tools...
Right? And even if there is...
You can't find it. But
can't find it.
With these tools, maybe there is. Maybe there is something for us to see. And that makes it more exciting to go out there and look. Right?
Yep. And the EU Sandbox team and Montreal team seem to be doing a great job of starting to get that going. I'm actually really, really hoping that Pyro doubles down on that with the age that they've built into there, with the fact that they seem to be kind of getting more into the lore. They talked about the what is it, the Phantom of Pyro or the Ghost of Pyro, something, some figure in lore that causes certain sounds to happen in the caves on Pyro 2. And like you can tell, they're starting to drop these little nuggets in there to give us something to look out
There's
for
a couple
out
of
there.
things,
And I hope they
just
go
talked about
further.
on the roadmap that they're going to be adding in this new armor for a faction in Pyro that apparently worships like a pseudo deity or something, like a cult. I think that's really interesting.
Is it the fire bats?
I think that's what it is, but it's some sort of cult faction. I think that's really cool. The runes right now that you can find, the 5 ones on Microtech, actually have a chance to have Hades, the Hades alien artifacts. So those are also interesting. Like having the stories that you can find, these artifacts that you can find that lead up to something. That is really exciting. I think that's one of the most exciting things. I actually had one of the EU Sandbox 1 team members in my chat when I was first exploring one of the outposts on PTU, and I said that this is really exciting. He was like, that's great feedback. Thanks for that. So hopefully we'll see more of these stories that you can find in these loot boxes and these runes just lying around. So look, you should look for that, by the way.
Yeah, I really, really want them. I'm going to. I've only gotten to see one, but I'm excited to see more of them. I'm really looking for the narrative team to get more involved with these things and build that stuff out, like you said. That you could spend all week doing that. You know, it's when you talk about high efficiency additions, just throwing in a quick little, like a paragraph of text into those ruins to explain some of the story around that would work wonders for making it a more interesting place. So I hope they take that feedback and keep going with it.
I think that the map can also tie into it. I feel like a lot of these points of interest should have names or something that were recorded in history. Like maybe this is the I don't know, Bob homestead, and they disappeared mysteriously 20 years ago. Nobody knows what happened to them. And it's now occupied by some squatters, the Nine Tails gang. And if you go there, you can find out some clues about what happened to Bob's family, you know. I think that'd make the world feel more alive. I mean, it's kind of like what, you know, Bethesda does with their worlds.
Yeah.
You know, there's a story to find everywhere. Same thing with CD Projekt Red with the Witcher series and Cyberpunk. Everywhere you look in those games, there's a story that some developer put into the game to make the world feel like something happening just off screen, and you're missing out if you don't look. Having that feeling is great. It makes you want to play. It's like, oh man, I don't want to miss out on this. This is cool.
Yeah. And like you said, that's one of the best things that's happening with this game now. It really seems like it's kind of now that the tools are starting to be built and they can breathe a little and spend time on some of these other little things. They're finally exploring that stuff. And that's one of the more powerful things that keeps me interested in what's happening in this game. Is like, I'm always looking at what are they adding to this game and how can they build that into the verse as opposed to just adding it.
With you 100%. Very excited.
Well, on that note, I think this is a good place for us to wrap it up for today. This was a great talk about some of the stuff coming up. Honestly, I really liked the point that you made about the content that we're making and how we represent the game and the features. That's good stuff. I'm gonna think on that. But I'd like to thank you more for coming to this show, episode 59. It has been a ride, and I've been loving it. Thank you so much for joining me for this and for the other episodes this year. I always have great talks with you, and
hey, exactly,
I hope we get to play more.
Okay, so the charity we hosted, we actually finally got to play together. I want to do. It doesn't even have to be charity. Let's just hang out and play some Star Citizen. I would love that. So hit me up on a weekend or something.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, a little bit later tonight, I might even play. So if you're around, maybe we can hop in a session in PTU. So let me know.
All right, man. Yeah, I'll be in touch. And I'm sure most people who are listening or watching know who you are, but want to go ahead and let people know where they can find your content?
I'm a little known YouTuber. I'm sorry. I'm on YouTube and stream on Twitch, youtube.com/morphologists and twitch.com or twitch.tv/morphologists. You can find me in both those locations. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram. I don't advertise those as much, but I am trying to be a little bit more active on Twitch a bit. Sorry, not Twitch, Twitter. Did I say Twitch or Twitter? I'm on Twitter, and I am on Instagram as well. I'm trying to be more active in those places, so you can check me out there. I post pictures of my projects. People are always interested in like what I'm doing in architecture. You can see that stuff on Instagram. And then I like if there's some like things I don't want to make a video or something about.
That's cool.
I just want to make a quick comment. That's something I found out from a developer or a conversation I had with a cool top-notch content creator like Tomato. I might say something on Twitter, so you can follow me there.
Hey. Twitter it has this reputation, and I know a lot of people don't like it. I was never I didn't care for Twitter until I started using it for like Star Citizen stuff. But I realized if you curate it to what you like, the Star Citizen community is actually really big on Twitter. Like there are people having conversations every day. Robert Space Industries is on there. The devs are all on there. They talk to all of us.
I found that it's actually a really great place to interact with other creators.
Twitter, but
strangely enough, like it's the YouTube system and a lot of these other systems, or a lot of these other social media websites, they don't offer a really great way to get in touch with people. But this, like, I've talked to Rode through this. I've talked to Level Cap and Linus Tech Tips. Like, that's how I've communicated with all these people. It's through Twitter. So I'm kind of like starting to try to focus on that a little bit. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's honestly, Twitch is the worst when it comes to that.
Surprisingly, YouTube's very toxic, as I found out posting in the community section. Oh my gosh, I was not expecting that.
At least YouTube has a community section, though. You know, because I'm like, Twitch subscribers, I want to give rewards, right? I do this thing where I do exclusive videos for people who support. YouTube, I upload straight to YouTube. Memberships works no problem. Patreon, I upload straight to Patreon. Memberships works no problem. Twitch, you can't do anything with Twitch. They don't even have a community page for you to put announcements out about your
frustrating.
streams.
You have to do like a little app connection in one of the panels, which doesn't even... I agree. I think Twitch can do better about community, about creating a community hub on their platform for people to interact. They're definitely dropping the ball on that. The problem is that they're so successful and they have no competition, because YouTube's not even trying, that they're not motivated to make any important changes. So that's really disappointing. Come on, YouTube, do something.
Well, YouTube's been trying now. They've been trying. In fact, they just signed somebody else this week, but they have been grabbing some of the big creators over there. They just added gifted memberships. They added raids. So they're definitely starting to step up to Twitch, and I think Twitch needs to stop resting on their early, early first place. They were the first ones into the market, and they really capitalized on that. But at this point, I think YouTube is starting to take notice. So what they need to do, in my view,
I know we're ending this, but I want to just get this out. If YouTube wants to really compete with Twitch, I think one of the important things for them to do is somehow create a way to separate on a YouTube channel the streams from the way streams are treated from the way that videos are treated. Because for a lot of these creators who are used to creating video content on YouTube, suddenly posting a stream can be jarring and frustrating for viewers who are expecting well-curated, edited content. And it's getting in their feed when they're expecting something differently. So it needs to be treated differently by YouTube. And I think that would encourage a lot of creators such as myself to actually use that platform for streaming instead of Twitch. I might actually stream, because I have most of my viewership is there. When I have done the very rare YouTube stream, I've gotten close to 1,000 viewers, but it's such a crappy platform that I just don't do it. It's got so few features and so few integrations. It's just, I get so much more on Twitch with the low latency and a lot of the Twitch features, like the donos and the the integrations with chat on screen and the raid systems. I know there's just a lot of missing stuff on YouTube that we still don't have.
I would check what they've been adding, because they've filled in a lot of those gaps recently. I would say still the main thing that they're struggling with is bot integration. But as far as support goes, I personally get more support on YouTube than I do on Twitch now. Super chats, memberships, gifted, stuff like that. I get more viewers on YouTube than I do on Twitch now. I'm not sure entirely if that's just, my Twitch stream has been struggling lately with stability, but I think also it might be just the amount of people who are streaming
YouTube's
on Twitch
a better
now.
Platform for growth, though. I know Twitch is trying to make an effort. They just changed their interface to make it so that you can see different creators who aren't on the top. But YouTube just has a much, much, much bigger viewer base. They're so much bigger than Twitch. We see viewers, big streams with 30,000 people, and we're like, wow, that's amazing. But a YouTube video can get millions of views. So most Twitch streams, even the best ones, get nowhere close to the exposure that YouTube does. So I think that's why. You've got more viewers.
It's definitely
and
different.
You get more exposure on YouTube.
Yeah. That's mostly it. But anyways, talking shop. We did a lot of shop talk this podcast. Hope you all enjoyed it.
I apologize.
No, it's fine. I love it. This has been the launch sequence. My friends, thank you all for coming, for watching. If you're on the audio platforms, thanks for listening. Those audio podcasts are ad-free, so if you find YouTube ads to be annoying, make sure to hit that link down in the video description. Anchor, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, wherever you listen to your podcasts, we're probably there. And besides that, if you'd like to listen or view these live, I also host it right here in my Discord server, or this new service we're using, for all of my supporters, whether on Twitch, YouTube, Patreon, Ko-fi, where it might be. So if you're interested in that, please get that hookup, and we will see you in the next one. But until next time, this has been the Launch Sequence Podcast. Thank you all for coming, and I'll see you in the next